get started. Okay, so thanks for speaking with me today. So just to start off with, could you do a quick introduction of your team, kind of talking about where you're based and your role within Thunder and how you're connected to Thunder?
So I'm David Cranston. I have been the Associate Professor of Surgery in the University of Oxford, although reaching the magic age of 68 last year, that finished. So I'm, I suppose, Emeritus Professor and Emeritus Fellow at Green Templeton College as from this term. So I trained as a urological surgeon, but have had a major interest in high-intensity focused ultrasound since about 2000, and we've had a big link over the last 20 years with Chongqing HIFU company in China. So we had the first HIFU machine from Chongqing in the Western world, the JC extracorporeal HIFU machine, which we CE marked and on liver and kidney tumors. And I've had a series of PhD DPhil students over the last years. The first one who was with me, James Kennedy, who set it up with me, was working, got his DPhil on that. He's now changed direction, is actually the vicar at Chipping Norton, just north of Oxford. But still in touch with him, and he was out in China talking about his change in direction a few years ago. But we have been looking at HIFU-wise, and that's, I guess, has been my link with Thunder, and basically through Gail Tahar, who's I've known for a long time and has been working with us. So we've been looking over the years at uterine fibroids, at kidney tumors, at liver tumors. We have trials going now of pancreas ablation, of pancreas targeted drug delivery. Paul Lyon did his DPhil with Konstantin Kusius on targeted drug delivery for liver tumors. And we're hoping, we're doing some prostate HIFU work as well. So basically that's the clinical HIFU program in Oxford. Lots of clinicians involved in that and very supportive. And then of course we've got Konstantin Kusios, who's head of biomedical engineering with Eleanor Stride, who's now running what's called the BOTNA 3 setup in the orthopedic hospital. So looking at potentially in the future, looking at hopefully antibiotic targeted drug delivery using, well, not ablative ultrasound, but ultrasound just for hypothermia. And Konstantin and Robin Cleveland have got a lot of preclinical work going on. So we got buy-in from a lot of people, and although I'm doing less, I still have a big link with China and trying to train up some of the younger guys.
Yeah, so it sounds like you kind of are more on the clinical side of things, and then you link up with some of the more preclinical groups as well.
That's true. Yeah. I've been just totally on the clinical side of things, but been to some of the Thunder meetings and really was linked with Thunder through Gail.
Yeah. So with the clinicians that do PhDs with you, do they kind of come with a range of backgrounds and interests? Because obviously we see a lot more interdisciplinary research recently.
Yeah, so the ones that have been with me have primarily been clinicians. I don't have any more now, but I've had 4. James Kennedy was the first, Roland Illing, who then went off and is currently actually working in Washington with Amazon, and Tom Leslie, who's a consultant in Oxford doing prostate cancer stuff, and then a chap called Rob Ritchie, who was also a urologist. Those were my 4. Konstantin had Paul Lyon. Paul's started his training as a surgeon, actually having done a maths degree, and then changed to radiology, but he did his DPhil on targeted drug delivery for liver tumours, which was very successful, first in man study, which was written up in
Wow.
Lancet Oncology, as I'm sure a lot of people know.
Yeah.
And very much hoping to keep him in Oxford and very much see him as the future of clinical work in Oxford. And then, of course, we have Professor Feng Wu, who's been with us from China for the last 20 years as well. So those are the clinical people at the moment. So the clinical team is relatively small, and we'd certainly like to build that up. Having said that, we've got a lot of buy-in, fortunately, from many consultants across different disciplines. The other thing we'd love to get, which we haven't got at the moment, is a brain HIFU unit in Oxford, but that's one of our long-term aims, if we can get the funding for that.
Yeah, so it sounds like you're really covering a range of areas with the ultrasound over in Oxford.
Yeah.
Do you find that because you're so invested in the clinical side and you've got the preclinical, that you can almost speed up the translation from preclinical to clinical?
Well, yeah, hopefully that will, because the other thing that we're interested in, and we're doing this with the pancreatic ablation and targeted drug delivery, is looking at the immunology. And my PhD, my DPhil, was in transplant immunology. And of course, transplant immunology and cancer are closely related. And although I certainly would be rusty now on the immunology, especially as it moves so quickly, we've got a very strong, and have had for many years, a very strong transplant immunology program. And so looking at the immunological side of ablation and targeted drug delivery, we're working very closely with somebody who's been very closely involved on the transplant immunology side as well. So we are very fortunate in having lots of different specialties. So from that point of view, yes, hopefully that will help to speed up the translational side of things.
That's quite exciting. So you
The
said
other
you
thing,
were...
sorry, just so it's one other thing. The other thing that Robin Cleveland is very involved in is because they have got a preclinical brain system looking at brain function and some neurology. They're not actually treating with ablation at all, but just trying to develop their own clinical brain system to look at various aspects of that.
That sounds exciting. So you said you were kind of interested from about 2000, and that seems kind of where therapeutic ultrasound has become increasingly more popular. Why do you think it has become so popular?
Well, I mean, let's take, for example, uterine fibroids, which obviously isn't a cancer treatment, but we can do that under sedation. We don't need an operating theatre to do it. We're doing that in the radiology department. We do need an anaesthetist and sedation. And although we have kept the patients overnight, just to be absolutely sure there's no problem, we've never had any problems with them. So potentially that can be done as a day case. So I think the other thing that is happening, and I've said this in some of the webinars that I've done with China, I think with COVID, it may well enhance the take-up of HIFU for two reasons. Firstly, as you will be aware from all the publicity around this, the waiting lists for surgery following COVID have just rocketed. So there's huge waiting lists. So if you can do a procedure that does not involve an operating theatre, then you're freeing up an operating theatre. If you can do something as a day case, you're speeding things through. And with uterine fibroids, for example, we find that the success rate is very high. The complication rate, well, nothing's zero, but the major complication, of course, as people know with HIFU, is if the bowel gets in the way, you can make a hole in the bowel. But if the bowel is not in the way, the only problems that we've had is occasionally blisters or very occasionally more serious skin burns.
Mm.
And so I think that, and of course, unlike radiotherapy, you can repeat the procedure. So I think COVID may potentially have stimulated the take-up of HIFU as well. But I think here you have a procedure that is non-invasive, that is safe, that is quick, and is effective in many cases.
Yeah, that's really interesting to hear. Almost a positive spin on COVID delays. Have you found with COVID there have been major delays to any kind of research or projects that you've been working on, especially?
Well, yes, there have, because I think certainly for the preclinical stuff, well, the clinical stuff has stopped. All our treatments basically stopped for a while. Fibroid treatment and everything stopped. And I think Konstantin Kousios and the preclinical people work in, well, what in Oxford we call the Green Building, which is a big research development building. And that's basically been shut for quite a long time. So everything has stopped and slowed down with COVID. Yeah, it's just starting up again, I think. So yes, I think there have been major delays, and I think there have been delays to research, delays to people's PhDs. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's such a shame. Yeah, we'll finish it there. Thanks so much for the interview. That's really great to hear, especially from a clinician's point of view.
Yeah, no, pleasure. Well, I hope, have a great break.